Thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Newport City Council Governance Audit Committee. I'm in the chair for a very short period of time. First item is appointment of chairperson. Can I have a nomination for chair, please? Have a second? Can I have a vote, please? All in favour? That was on the screen. Okay, that's carried. Congratulations, Gareth. You're chair for another year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhys, and thank you, committee, for hopefully a vote of confidence in me being the chair. Good to see Councillor Montford back with us. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, which isn't there, is the appointment of vice chair. So do we have a nomination for vice chair? Norma?
I nominate Don Reid.
Don Reid, is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mogford. Any other nominations? No. Anyone against? No, thank you. Well done, Don. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I believe we've got numerous apologies.
Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Perkins, Councillor Jordan and Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is declaration of interest. No, there are none. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting for correctness only.
Chair, can I just make a comment on the minutes? I realise that the committee has made a decision to do more succinct minutes, and you know I was opposed to that, and I think it's quite important to be transparent in terms of our discussions, albeit I accepted that. And I thought we agreed at the last committee meeting that we'd have a summary of what the officers said and a summary of what the committee said. Reading these minutes, I couldn't possibly comment on them because they didn't tell me anything. So it's about getting that balance of something in between, and I thought we had the balance right, and I think we've gone to too much brevity on this one.
Any officers want to comment or just obviously have a look at that again? Yeah, Taylor, can you have a look at it again? Thank you. They'll look at it again, Norma.
I think that would be good, because when I read the minutes, I thought I can't possibly comment on it because they actually say nothing other than the committee accepted this recommendation.
Okay, if the officers have a look at that again and pick up that point. Yeah, thank you.
At least someone reading it, if they had a little bit more detail and could understand a little bit about what point the officers were making and what point the committee was making in response.
Yeah, thank you for Norma. Hopefully that's noted, and Taylor will have a look at that in due course. Apart from that, for correctness, any comments? No? All in, can I have a vote, please? Someone move. Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. 4A is the recommendations table. Obviously, anyone got any issues on that? Because obviously, Norma?
Sorry, on actions arising, it was in relation to the call-in for unaccompanied asylum seekers children's interest. I note that there's a follow-up audit has taken place, presumably. It was March, April, but it's not coming back to committee, I think, to September. Well, it's actually a whole year since the recommendation was made. And I thought, is it possible for that to come back a bit earlier? It just seems a long time from the making of a recommendation and it's coming back to the committee.
Thank you for that, Norma. Amy, are you going to pick that one up, or Myrian?
The follow-up's being done now. I think the main contact was on annual leave, as was the auditor, but it should be able to come back. Now, I was talking to Taylor about dates and committees. Let me just check what was coming to which committee, but as soon as it's done, it can come back to committee, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, can we just have a look at the times? If we can get that into an earlier scheduled meeting, we can bring it back when it's ready. Yeah, I was just trying to check whether it was going to be ready.
Thanks for that reassurance. Norm, are you happy with that? Is that they'll try and fit it? Yeah, okay. Anything else? The only comments I make on the completed ones, now we've had them at committee now, they can be taken off for next time. Is that okay, Taylor? Okay, good. Okay, can I have, well, recommendation is to note the recommendations timetable. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you. Seconded, thank you. And anyone against? No, thank you very much. Item 5 then is the call-in fleet vehicle maintenance, pages 13 to 20. Who's going to take us through this? Stephen?
Yes, Chair, just
Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just speak briefly to the report. So in terms of fleet maintenance, infrastructure look after fleet maintenance on behalf of all departments across the Council. The audit was related to the fleet maintenance contract. Audit was undertaken during the last iteration of the contract, as noted in the report, but we've since re-procured the contract via normal tendering procedures. That's recently commenced, and the actions we've taken forward to the new contract. We've engaged with colleagues in audit related to the actions, and the actions are detailed in the progress update part of the report. Chair, I don't think there's anything much more for me to introduce by way of introduction, so happy to take any questions from the committee or yourself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Any questions? Don?
Yeah, my first question on this, before I let colleagues come in, was with the limited opinion rating, the audit report, did you accept that? That it was a fair report, a fair rating as limited?
Yes, we did accept the audit report, and we worked on the basis of the recommendations and actions noted in there, so yeah, we accepted that.
Okay. Any other questions? Norma?
We're on the fleet maintenance contract, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a number for it. What worries me about this report more than anything else, and what it contains, is I'm still not assured, because for me it was all about, again, management, not properly supervising people and how processes were followed. And I think I'm looking for that assurance, really, because it sounded to me, reading it, that staff are flouting the procedures and the processes, which I think for an audit committee is an area of great concern, and for senior management in the organisation. And I'm just reading it, it didn't give me the assurance, and this probably, hopefully, will come from the follow-up audit, but it's a pointer really for us, that management are managing and they're ensuring that staff are properly trained. And I just would like to make that comment, because I had a number of issues as I was going through it, thinking, well, how can I be clear that that's actually happening? And from what I was reading, it wasn't clear, but I think it's an issue I certainly would like covered in the follow-up. I don't know whether any of you can respond to that.
Hi, my name's Alistair Hopkins. I'm the Service Manager for Transport. I haven't got a thing there. Yeah, I think, touching on some of the points that you raised, you're absolutely right. We haven't had the follow-up yet. But what I think is probably worth trying to get across anyway is that in our opinion, a lot of those actions were being carried out. It's just about capturing them and demonstrating and evidencing that they were happening. That's where we were getting criticised, and that's what we accepted, and we've worked on that. So we've worked up and developed a number of templates that we're now putting into action with the contractor. So we await the follow-up, and we'll have to have that discussion with the internal audit then.
Point. Were any performance issues raised during the process, and were they dealt with? Because it sounds to me that people were not performing their roles and responsibilities as they should. And did you deal with any performance issues with staff?
To my memory, I don't think there was anything around individual performance in the report. Right. It was more about the actual capturing the monitoring that was taking place. I think there was one issue around training that perhaps hadn't been undertaken.
Yeah, I saw
where,
it was done some
where again, that was more of a refresher, actually. The training had happened, because it's mandatory training for managers, so it had happened. It was at a point in some time ago when a refresher course hadn't been taken up, which has since happened.
Okay, thank you. I think focus on those areas, because they just raised concern in my mind reading it. Thank you.
I think an example of what normas. If you have a look at reference 1.3, which is the first one in the progress update, is contract extensions were not approved in accordance with the contract standing orders, and it says current and future contracts will be approved. So clearly they weren't dealt with previously. So whether the manager was dealing with it, whilst it's a training issue, they were presumably not aware of the contract standing orders. So, you know, that's a failing in some respects of performance, and therefore, you know, it does need to be addressed, which you said, you know, it says new contracts awarded will be in accordance with it, but the member of staff, whoever deals with this, will need to ensure that that is dealt with. And that's just one example, I think, just as an illustration, in my mind. Don?
Just a question. My original question was much along the lines that that Norma said, but in your response, and it's a question back to you, you're saying that all the actions were done, they just weren't recorded. Is that what you're saying?
I was saying that in general terms, a lot of the things that were included in there were actually happening in terms of the meetings with the contractor and discussions were had around performance. Just a lot of it wasn't captured at that point in time. But as I was saying, they've since been developed in monitoring templates, so all of that data is now being shared between the contractor and Newport City Council, and it's being captured in various templates.
So everything was being done, it just wasn't being captured?
I'd say largely yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? I've just got two questions, really. Obviously, these are large contracts, I would have thought, fleet management. Are they recorded on the council's contract register?
Chair, yes, I believe they are. I will go away and check, but I understand that I think this one is, yes, absolutely.
Okay, because again, there should have been a checking mechanism somewhere. Whoever holds the contract register, I would have thought, should have really checked some of these issues. But if you can go away and have a look at them, Myron, that's great. The other issues in regards to the change of the delegated amount of money, which is in 4.02, and I mentioned in 4.01. Obviously, they've gone up from £300 to £400. The only question I've got there, is that a reasonable amount, or is it a drop in the ocean? Because presumably for some of these repairs, I should imagine on your fleet, you know, £300 or £400 won't do very much nowadays. And I'm just wondering, A, has that been agreed by council through the delegated power provisions? And B, is it actually enough? Because otherwise, spending more than £300 or £400 presumably has got to go through a process, I should imagine, of either head of service or the director. Do you know what I mean? Is this bureaucracy being put in place when actually £1,000 should have, I don't know, I'm just saying, is £1,000 more reasonable rather than 400? You know, can't get much a day nowadays for 400 quid, can you?
So just to say, the amount that come in actually over the 400 on a daily basis is not as much as you would actually think. So it's just a way of trying to capture that we don't have to look at everything that's coming through. But yeah, it's been written into the new contract, so it's gone through procurement board. Yeah.
Has it been amended in the Constitution then? That it's because presumably this is a delegated amount.
My own bill, that I think the delegated ones are higher than this anyway. So this is literally, I don't know, a bit of gold plating, if you like, from what I can see. As you say, maybe it's over the top, but I think that's what they've written in the contractor's check. I'm pretty sure their delegate authority is a fair bit higher than this.
No, that's okay. And again, in some respects, I say, well, why didn't you put the higher figure in there? But it's a departmental discussion, presumably. So, yeah, okay, thank you. Are there any comments? Amy?
I just wanted to say that we have reached out to start the follow-up or tracking of actions as such, so we'll be able to report that to committee once we're done.
Sorry, are there any other comments? The only comment I'd make is, when I read the report, I thought, amazing. You know, you've made excellent progress. A lot of these issues have been addressed. But it's the point Norma has made. You know, it's like the pupil marking his own homework here. So it's that evidence we need to make sure that these items have been addressed fundamentally by an independent individual, and that will be the audit team coming in again to ensure that they're done. But, you know, if what you've said, and again, whoever is responsible for writing this report has got ultimate responsibility and accountability for it, and if audit go in there and say, yes, X, Y and Z have now been dealt with, then all I would say is, great, well done, because, again, that's where we need to be. I'm not saying they go in again as a secret shopper in the audit team to ensure that lots of this is being done, because all you've done is address the recommendations. But I think, you know, from me, and hopefully the committee say thank you for that. Thank you for what you've done. We await the review audit and hopefully a clean bill of health. So thank you for that. Okay, is there anyone else? No? So if we go to the recommendation then, I think what we say is that we note the content of the report and basically await the review audit. You happy with that? Yeah. Someone prepared to move, please? Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Anyone against? No? Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, for attending. You can stay if you want, because we have a good meeting normally. But if you want to leave now, please do so. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 6 on the agenda is grants and returns certification 2023-24. And I should imagine, is this colleague from Audit Wales? Is that you, Anthony? Or Bethan?
It is me, it's Anthony Ford. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Brilliant. My headphones have been playing up all day. So this is the 23-24 certification summary. So it really summarises the themes from the work. Each of the 4 grants we've audited or covered with a separate detailed certificate related to the expenditure. So this is more around the process, trends, the fees that have been charged and so on. And it's 23-24, and why that's worth commenting on, we're in a year 3, I believe, of our catch-up cycle where post-COVID things slipped, so we've clawed a lot of time back in terms of our timeline. So hopefully next year we'll be on a better footing, closer to the deadline that each of the bodies set. So we're heading in the right direction. So that's all good. It's £120 million we certified, and the 2 big ones being housing benefit subsidy and the domestic rates return NDR. So I'll just quickly skip on to the findings on each. So I won't go into all of them. I think it's worth commenting on the housing benefits subsidy and the NDR claims, where there were some big errors. And I think the housing benefits subsidy, I think what we're seeing is a trend in that errors and issues are reducing over time. So the systems and change take a while to bed in, and I think we're starting to see those improvements. And how that benefits the council is DWP requires us to do 40 items of testing for every error we've had in the previous year. So I think last year we had 6 categories of errors, so that's 240 cases that the council's team and ourselves look at. This year we're looking at 4 now going forward. So improvement in those areas ultimately means less work for everyone, a better certificate and reduced fees. So that trend we're starting to see. Ultimately, sometimes, you know, the amount of errors isn't huge in terms of absolute value, but DWP are looking for assurance that actually fundamentally the data is sound. So, you know, there's such a vast data set. Sometimes the errors are small and it can vary year on year in terms of what actually is found by the review of the data. So housing benefit subsidy, there was a qualification, but generally I think we're seeing an improvement trend there. So that's good. And then NDR, whilst the figure is a big figure, 815k, it wasn't necessarily due to a problem in the data. It was simply a small error in a part of the pack of information we get to audit the claim, and it's all about the money that's collected and goes back and forth to Welsh Government. So it was just a change in that figure in terms of cash flows, and ultimately I think the council will gain from that in the sense of there'll be cash coming back. But I wasn't involved in that, and I'm happy to go back and check the detail on that one if needed. So audit fees, we've separated out the housing benefits subsidy because pretty much across all our bodies, that is the big piece of grants work we do now. It's, you know, we used to do a portfolio of 20, 30 grants a year, but it's down to 4 and 5 in most bodies, and the housing benefits subsidy to DWP is the lion's share of that. But as you can see, and this links to what I said before with regards to errors, the fee is coming down because the trend in errors and issues is being reduced also. So it's a reduced fee in light of I think our fee scales went up, you know, 5 or 6% over the last couple of years. So the actual time going in is quite a lot more than that. So that's good, and hopefully that can continue into future years. And again, the other grants, a reduction in time. So happy to take questions on that, because I know audit fees always generate discussion. But if there are no questions and the trend satisfies the council, I'll move on to the next slide.
I wouldn't assume there are no questions, Anthony. I, you know, never make that assumption. I'll tell you that now.
I was ahead of myself.
Yeah, you are. Can I just say, firstly, thank Helen and Bethan, who were in a discussion with me about providing the time spent on these audits. So thank you very much for that. I took a sharp intake of breath when I saw the amount of time spent. But given your explanation, Anthony, about you have to do 240 audits or whatever, I can understand that now. What I don't understand, and maybe you can explain it to me, is that if you do this on behalf of DWP, the DWP pay you for doing this? Or why does the council have to pay you for doing it if you're doing the assurance work on behalf of DWP?
It's one of those things that it falls under the Auditor General's responsibilities to audit grant claims. So of the claims we've done, not all of them are for the council. So there's the teachers' pension, so that's by the Teachers' Pension Authority. So they commission us as the body best placed to do that work. So that's the arrangement that's been in place, and the Auditor General is the responsible person then to undertake that work. So it is circular in that sense, and that the council pays us our fee for that work because it's not part of our sort of fixed audit fee, so it's an additional fee, and that's a national thing. So it's a big piece of work across the UK because it's done at all councils. But that's the, you know, that is the arrangement that's been in place for many years. And I think the important thing is that trend in learning from errors and changing processes, because there is a tangible benefit then reduced fees. And it's never always going to be 100%. Sometimes there could just be an error found, and that's it. It's not necessarily representative of failings per se. It's just a huge amount of data with quite a lot of complex transactions and difficult, individuals in difficult circumstances. So I'll just quickly summarize. I think I've probably touched on this slide already. This goes into the detail behind some of those errors, and unless the council wants me to, I'm happy not to go into the detail, but it just summarises the nature of the errors. And I think the key thing is what I've already summarised is taking those errors and making sure there's learning with individuals or teams or changes in approach. Those things that's the key really, and we see that across all our bodies. Is that learning takes time, and obviously it's worth noting that this year came very close to the previous year because of that catch-up process I mentioned. So 22 and 23 were done very close together, and that can often mean an error hasn't really had time to be addressed in one year because we were already doing the subsequent year. So that's key, and I think that would be something it would be worth flagging up in next year's work. And can we measure that improvement that those processes are generating, both through reduced errors, extended testing, and fees?
Yeah, thank you for that. And, again, it's good that the fee is going down, but I wish I was an organisation where I could cost shunt onto someone else for you to do the audit. If the teachers' pension scheme wanted done, then surely they should be paying for it. But I understand what you say, and I don't want you to comment on it. But, council seems to be paying for everything. But there we are. We'll leave that there. Are there any other questions? Dom?
Yeah, my first question, Anthony, I think you're not going to be able to answer it because you've already put the small print in to say you didn't know. On the NDR, you touched on the 815,000 that led to a decrease in the amount payable by the council. I was just interested to know what the actual amount of the decrease was payable by the council. 815 does look like a big figure. I suspect the amount payable by the council is going to be quite small. Would that be true? The figure, it was all about in relation to bad debts and where debts are provided for. So it's not necessarily the cases of benefit paid to bodies. So off the top of my head, I think the working paper showed 850, and then the subsequent claim was somewhere about 175. So that was the correction of the formulae that built up the figures. So it was about a 650k difference between the first claim and then the final claim. But if you want the absolute detail, we can get that back to you. But I do believe it's around that sort of level. If anyone in the finance team is there and has that to hand, please jump in.
Yeah, I think Marian's waving, so...
Yes, I think as has been said, I think that was an error in the calculation of the bad debt provision. It was just a human error at that time. We calculate this correctly every year. It didn't happen that year. That would have been the exact amount of the reduction then that we would have been handed over to Welsh Government. So that error resulted in the council having to pay into the pool £815,000 less. So it was a very fortuitous finding by Audit Wales, and thank you very much.
Dom?
I have one more question, Anthony, and that's to do with the housing benefit subsidy. I agree with you. Great that the direction of travel is so good. The one thing I just wanted your observation on is I'm thinking surely the number of claims that the council's having to deal with here in Newport is increasing dramatically, and the errors are going the other way. Would that be true?
I have to say I'm not sure the detail about the number of claims. I would assume you're correct in that. we're definitely seeing things like the homelessness side increasing. As regards the other, I don't have the data of the number of cases. I'm sorry, I don't have that to hand. Can get it out. But in terms of demand, I think I would agree with you. Yes, it's certainly not going to it's not getting any easier with all of this, and the pressures are as much as ever, if not increasing. So in that context, yes, I think the trend is in a positive direction.
Yeah, I think my comment with that is just to thank the team, because I think that I know the claims are going up, and to actually, for it to be the direction of travel, to be going the other direction, we almost as a committee like to send our congratulations, because I think that's a job well done.
Yeah, well said, Don. I endorse that. But Marion, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And can I just thank Don for those words? We've got the benefits manager and the Revs and Bens manager here as well, and obviously it's their hard work and their team. Not only has the number of claims gone up, but because these are temporary homelessness claims that are going up, we have to check individuals on a weekly basis because their circumstances change that regularly. A housing benefit claim for a family that is placed in a somewhere and then is fixed is more work, but when you've then got somebody whose circumstances are very challenging, then this is really difficult. So the workload is even greater than you might think. So actually, what they've achieved has been even more kind of impressive, really. So my thanks as well, because they're here, and it continues to be a challenging area. But yeah.
So hopefully Emma and Paul will have heard that. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Greatly appreciated. Are there any other questions? Any comments? No. The recommendation, I think, is that we note the contents of the report. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Item 7 then is the Audit Wales work programme and timetable for Newport City Council. Is that you again, Anthony, or are we going to have the pleasure of Bethan?
That's me, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah. There you are. Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. So this is your regular quarterly update for the work programme for financial and performance audit. I'll take it generally as read, but I will run through a couple of the areas of performance just to highlight. You can see that you've got the financial audit timetable there. Now Anthony's just been discussing some of that with you. Regarding the performance audit work, you'll see that the unscheduled care review thematic has been published. As I understand, and maybe when the staff can jump in if I'm wrong, I believe it's coming to July Governance and Audit Committee as an item, and I think it's also going to a scrutiny committee as well for information. So it is on its way, but if you want to see it in advance, you can see that the link is there, that it's published. Regarding our local review of environmental health services, that's currently in field work. Temporary accommodation, it says their field work's underway, but I believe we're at the draft reporting stage now, so that is a little bit further on, so you should be expecting that quite soon. Fieldwork underway in capital planning, and we are currently scoping the children's services review, which you'll see there's a note has replaced the financial constraints or discretionary local government services review, which was originally on the work programme. Further down, you'll see information from Estin and CIW and some of our other reports and outputs regarding some of our national reports and reviews further down. I'm happy to take any questions on anything there, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Bethan, for that. Any questions? No? Comments? Don?
Yeah, this is a comment more for you, Chair, than Bethan. On page 31, where we've got the temporary accommodation, with the report published, as Bethan is saying, it's getting now in draft. Because this is such a big thing in Newport and doing it, I'm just wondering whether we as a committee should consider that being part of our work programme, so when it comes out, because I know that with this whole area, Newport have made such great strides and doing it. And I think it would be good just to have, for us to have a look at the report so we have assurance is how good it's going.
I'm sure Paul or Tracy can pick that up and bring it to committee when it's published. Yeah. Any other comments? Don, I'm waiting for another comment. Estyn?
Sorry, I have my notes. Right. This is, I just wanted to do with, we talked about this before in terms of, I think very often we don't sound our praises when Newport do a fantastic job. And it rankles me, and there's so much bad press that we get going, but the comments on Estyn in the report about how the education services have done, I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's against the backdrop, and in reading comments, the same is not said about other councils. So I'm very pleased to be in Newport. And really, as a committee, I just wanted us to be able, again, back to you, Chair, to be able to pass on our congratulations and our thank you, and for people to be specifically called out for the great work they're doing, I think is brilliant. And that was my comment on Estyn, and it's more, can we have a chance to really bank the wins and celebrate the good news, and doing that, because I think as a committee, that's a joy for us to be able to do.
Yeah. I'm sure Rhys could take that back, and we could actually have, apart from note in the report, that we send our congratulations, I presumably, to the director, because it says the director level and her impact. So it's very specific in relation, presumably, to the director. But obviously, this is a corporate issue as well. So whilst the director has been highlighted, I'm sure it relates to the corporate body itself and everyone who plays a part in that. But obviously, if those thanks can go back to everyone with just a special thanks to the director and her team.
Yeah, I'll do that. But I'd also just like to add in, we had an Estyn inspection of education services, which was really, really positive. We had an Estyn inspection of youth services in Newport, which was really positive. We had a joint inspection of the Youth Justice Service, which was positive. So, we do focus, and part of the committee's role is around looking at the ways in which we can get better at things. So that's inevitable. But, there's a lot of positivity out there as well around work, but I'll certainly pass on those thanks.
Sorry, which positive reports, Rhys, did Newport recently have? I didn't hear all the reports.
Estyn,
not long before. You mentioned justice.
Not long before the education services Estyn inspection, we had a youth service Estyn inspection, which was really positive. There's some recommendations in there for improvements, but it was really positive. And earlier in the year, last year, we had a HMIPP inspection of the Youth Justice Service, which was, again, some recommendations, some actions for improvement, but was really positive as well.
One last comment, Gareth. I'm just thinking, like, when we were talking earlier about the minutes, it'd be really nice if this could be included in the minutes, our congratulations, and this, so they're actually seeing that it's actually in the minutes and doing that, go through, because I think this is really, for us as a committee, this is so newsworthy and shows great progress being made as well. So, yeah, we want to applaud it, and it'd be really nice if that was in the minutes.
Yes. Any comments? Now, I'd just like to say, I just endorse what Don says. I think the unfortunate thing in local authorities is that we don't celebrate success enough. We take the brickbats day in, day out, local authorities. When you get it wrong, it'll be in the press. But when you get it right, you don't even get a mention. And I think, I just endorse what Don says. I think sometimes we need to blow our own trumpets here. If we get, clearly we're getting lots of things right in Newport. There are things which obviously will be areas for improvement, but I think we do need to celebrate these areas of success. And it's not only these areas, it's, the day in, day out work that the council does as well, and the teams of people. So, for me, I agree with Don. I think we need to thank everyone. It's a corporate, issue, even though it's very specific. So if you can convey that back, certainly, to the management team, and hopefully that can be cascaded down to the teams who deliver that. And again, you know, when we discuss the accounts, there's a tremendous amount of work goes there by the finance department and everyone else who feeds into it. So just to say thank you for that. Are there any other comments? No? I think, can we have a recommendation then that we note the contents of the report and that committee sends its best wishes to the Director of Education and the corporate body for delivering, you know, a very successful Estyn outcome this time round? Okay. Can I have someone to move? Thank you, Norma. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? No, thank you. Thank you, Bethan, and greatly appreciate it. And Anthony, thank you very much for that. Next one is we got the planning approach paper, rolling programme, and the internal audit charter. Amy?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening to the committee. So this is our internal audit rolling plan 25-26. This paper is brought to committee to inform members on our approach to internal audit planning for 25-26 and give you an update on the rolling internal audit plan. I wasn't going to take you through it word for word as normal. I'll just try and cover the key areas and then pick up sort of discussion and question at the end. So if the committee recall, back in March I did bring an annual plan, but just due to timing and capacity I hadn't had all the planning meetings. I have had those now, so you've got an updated audit plan there. But obviously taking the opportunity now that Newport City Council are part of the SWAP partnership to introduce that sort of planning approach and a rolling audit plan. So your internal audit planning paper starts on page 51 of the agenda pack. The reason for a change in our sort of planning approach and a rolling plan is to try and react to the fast-paced changing environments that Newport City Council and other local authorities are working in now. We need to be able to adapt, reprioritise and shift our focus to ensure that we're supporting the council and aligning our work to the council's aims, objectives and their key risks. This approach allows us to make sure we're auditing the right things at the right time for Newport City Council. So moving forward throughout 25-26, the aim now is to meet more regularly with heads of services and directors to inform our continual risk assessment, which then allows us to identify and prioritise the areas for audit attention. So your updated sort of rolling audit plan is on page 57, and then over the coming months we'll meet with those heads of service and incorporate any of those changes and report that back to committee. Just wanted to bring committee's attention to the external quality assessment. So SWAP has an EQA every 5 years. The last one was done last year, which confirmed our conformance. And we'll prepare for the next EQA now under the new global internal audit standards, and I will be communicating some information to committee around what that looks like and what the impact is to an internal audit under those new standards. You've got the internal audit charter on page 61. Again, that's quite a lengthy document. I wasn't going to take you through it. The global internal audit standards require the use of an internal audit charter. They define that as a formal document that includes the internal audit functions mandate, organisational position, reporting relationships, scope of work, types of service and other specifications. For me, it's sort of a blueprint. I kind of, that sat there underpinning what we're doing. And then I just thought it was worth mentioning that today I have provided a sort of presentation, not training as such, but provided a presentation to both senior managers and committee in more detail around the new ways of working under the SWAP partnership. So I just thought that was important to note. Hand over to any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amy. Obviously, we're looking forward, as I continuously say, to the working relationship with SWAP. I know that the officers are, keen to engage with you, and utilise your knowledge and experience, and I think that's been demonstrated in the past as well by people actually ringing you up, which I think is very, very important. You're not seen as the enemy, but you're seen as sort of improving service delivery in reality, and it's quite right and proper that where there are areas for improvement and there are significant, you identify that, and directorates and teams work with that. So, I think that's important. So, moving forward, it'd be great, I think. Any questions? Question, Dom?
Yeah, I just have one question, and first of all, really enjoyed reading it. I think I might be becoming sad. It was good to sort of see it, so thank you for that. The one thing my question was, with the internal audit charter, the question is, could you change some of the language so it's reflective of Newport in terms of the, who's in what position and more reflective of our constitution?
Yeah, thank you, Don. I'll take on that feedback and just fine-tune those so that it's really clear what roles are what. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? No, any comment? Norma?
I'd just like to endorse what John has just said, actually. I found the report really good to read, very clear. I could follow it, and I think that the session we've had beforehand was really good in terms of us understanding how SWOP works and how it engages with the council and ourselves. So I just want to compliment the team for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Norma. And I think basically for the record, the slides will go out to all members, even those not members of this committee. I know that Taylor recorded some of it, so if some of that can be utilised as well, if members would like to see it, that would be great. And thank you and your team for delivering that, Amy. That was very much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? No? Okay. Recommendations are that we approve the planning approach and rolling internal audit plan for 25-26, and that the internal audit charter also be approved. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Dawn. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Item 9 on the agenda is the internal audit annual opinion. Amy?
Me again. Thank you, Chair. Again, not going to take you through this word for word. I'll just try and give you that sort of higher level summary. So this report, as it says, gives you Newport City Council's annual opinion for 24-25. I'm pleased to say that the level of assurance that can be placed on the internal controls operating effectively is reasonable. We had no audits that identified a significant corporate risk to the Council. We had 81% of reports receiving either a substantial or a reasonable assurance. And in terms of delivery of the plan, we delivered 47 audits, which was 74% of the plan. Appreciate that is lower than the target that was set previously with the internal audit team KPIs. But I just wanted to note that we have actually started I just wanted to note that 13% of the plan we have started and is at various stages of completion just due to the timings of reports. We haven't included it into this annual opinion, but it will feed into the next one. I thought it was important to just pick up on action tracking and just raise that 39% of actions that we followed up weren't responded to. We've had a good conversation today about action tracking, and I'm confident that we'll see an increase in that now with being part of the SWOT partnership. Having said that, of the responses received, 71% of actions were implemented, so I thought that was positive. And as we've talked about today, you'll have an action tracking dashboard that will give you sort of more transparency around that. So we've got that to look forward to. 2 audits for 24-25 were given a limited assurance. They were fleet vehicle maintenance, which we've caught up on this morning, and gifts and hospitality. So the gifts and hospitality actions now will be followed up under the new SWOP action tracking processes, and then that will be reported back to committee on the progress of those. Within the report, you'll note there were no thematic findings identified. But I did note there were a couple of findings relating to sort of cross-cutting corporate processes that were coming through. So I'm just keen to do a little bit more work there and see, is there any thematic issues there? And again, that will be reported to committee. We've got a nice section on counter-fraud. Hoping the committee was really pleased to see that in there, and that sets the tone now going forward. You will have regular counter-fraud updates in the progress reports. And then just really to summarise the audits that make up this assurance opinion, you've got in detail at the end of your report. And that's it. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Amy, again, it's great, that we're now going to be making significant progress in a lot of the areas, certainly in regards to counter-fraud. Obviously, we've got the Audit Wales report and recommendations which we need to be focusing on, which, again, I think you are, and, satisfying that Audit Wales that we are dealing with those, in a responsible and correct manner. So that's really great to be in that position. So thank you very much for that. Any questions? Don?
Yeah, I was just wanted a question about with the gifts and hospitality, because it is such an emotive title that I'd be concerned that we as a committee didn't see. I think we do need to be really assured for that, just because it's an emotive subject. So for me, I'd probably want some clarification that, yeah, we will. I know we're in this swap over period, but for gifts and hospitality, could we operate on the previous system for this one as we do the transition? So that's question one. Question two is much easier. Question two is in paragraph 15, where it said the newest member of the team was to start in May 2025. And I just wanted to know, did they start?
Okay, I'm going to take the easy question first. They have started.
Excellent.
They are in the team. They started last Thursday. It's very early days. Does have audit experience though, so it's just learning the ropes of Newport City Council and learning the swap ways of working. The team have been incredible supporting him with that, so yeah, all looking really positive on that front. With gifts and hospitality, happy for the committee to take a decision here. I was just thinking, what about a middle-of-the-road approach where I will report that back? If you think, when I come back to you and report action tracking, there's going to be quite a lot of information, isn't there? So it may be that some of the moderates with, that simply have been completed and signed off. What about if I came back to you with a bit more of a detailed update, but from my action tracking processes? So to come back to you with not just, oh, they've done it, but actually give you some detail there. And then if you felt like the call-in still needed to take place, we could do it from that point.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Clearly, I know Mike Warbank's online. My understanding is you're reviewing the Constitution at the moment, and obviously gifts and hospitality will be a key part of that. And I don't think we've seen the report on gifts and hospitality in reality, or the recommendations, have we? So I think as long as they feed one another and you come back with sort of an interim report, I think that's very important for us moving forward, because, as Don says, I think, public perception is very important in these issues. Everyone assumes that, at Christmas everyone gets 3 bottles of whiskey and, and such. Oh, 4, yeah, okay. But, it's that issue, isn't it? And I think, whatever the response is that we're robust in regards to dealing with that. So, yeah, that would be good. Norma?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points on the paper and a couple of points on the report. First of all, on the paper, on page 22, paragraph 16, I was quite concerned to read that on follow-up management actions, there was only a 61% response rate, and I would have expected a higher response rate. And are we doing anything in the future to improve that response rate? And on risk, we've got the risk identified as members not involved with audit reporting process. And if you look at the mitigating action, until an audit, attend all governance and audit committee meetings and present reports on a regular basis. But that mitigating action doesn't address the risk. So I would suggest that needs to be looked at. On the actual...
Did you want to come back on that, Amy?
It would be helpful for my memory, so I haven't got to remember 3 questions, if that's okay. Sorry. Norma, you were right to pick up on the 61%. Was it 61%? Sorry. And I think, as we discussed today, I think SWAP's action tracking processes will be more robust. We will be asking for the evidence before we can close those off, and we will be regularly reporting to senior management heads of service if we're not getting the traction and the responses we need on those, and ultimately reporting to committee. The dashboard you've got ultimately will have like a 91%. So if there's more and more audit sort of pocket in there, you're going to have sort of oversight of that. So I think we can do something about that going forward. Would you believe that? No, I have got your second question. It was the risk, wasn't it? So sorry, let me just come back up. So members not involved with audit reporting processes. Okay, leave that with me. Can I have a look at that one? Is that okay? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And if I move on to the paper, I think Amy, you partly answered my queries on that. I just wanted some assurance, and I think this is page 83, for audits deferred at clients' requests, and that these weren't high risk and there were genuine reasons for the deferments. It'd be good to have assurance on that. And I noticed on page 44, 4 recommendations not implemented, on 3 on which there was no response, which I find unsatisfactory. I think everyone should respond. But the 4 recommendations not implemented, were there good reasons for that? And you might need to come back to me on that, but of the committee rather, not me.
I will need to come back to you on the previous actions and reasons. And apologies, because your other question has... Oh, the 4 audits deferred. Sorry, they are in there. It just takes a little while to come through. I might have to come back to you on that one as well, Norma, just to be really sure which 4 I'm referring to. I believe one was managed care, and I believe that there was a client reason, and actually they've requested that to be scoped as the first audit this year. So if it's been deferred, ideally they'd be one of the first audits we're doing. If not, there's a really good reason, but I will come back to you with that information to clarify.
That they're not high risk and they're a genuine reason. And I think we discussed that, didn't we, in the session?
Yeah, leave that with me. Yeah, Fab, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? Okay, the recommendation is that we note the overall audit opinion and we approve the annual internal audit report 24-25. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Dawn. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? No. Okay. Item 10 then is the Treasury Management Outturn Report. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So this report is to inform the committee of the Treasury activities undertaken within the 24-25 financial year. It shows that there was a slightly more active year in terms of Treasury management activity, and up until the end of March 25, the Council's net borrowing was 156.2 million, which is an increase of 33 million from March 24 levels. This was due to taking out loans to cover our refinancing requirement, some of our future borrowing aspirations, and we also had to take out £25 million of very short-term borrowing in order to cover cash flow at the end of the financial year. The report also details our investment balances and shows that from the end of March 24 to the end of March 25, there was not a significant change in investment activity, although the report does show that there were movements in year, and that was due to taking out long-term borrowing earlier, which meant we could then reinvest that in the short term. The report also details our PIs and our performance against them and any reasons for non-compliance. There are a few areas where we have failed, and we know that we need to look at those indicators going forward and update the 25-26 indicators, which we'll probably do for the mid-year monitoring report. And the non-compliance of our PIs shows the sensitivity of our Treasury position at the moment. So the position has been relatively stable in the past, reserves have been high, and the indicators have been fairly easy to set. But we know that the Council has a clear need to borrow. Our capacity to be internally borrowed is reducing as expected, as our use of reserves are being utilised as intended. And this, coupled with the fact that we've got an increase in our capital financing requirement as a result of the Council's capital programme, we know that we'll have to take out further borrowing in the future, so we know that we need to improve how we set our indicators going forward. The committee is asked to provide any comments and any feedback that we can include in this report then going forward to Cabinet and Council. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Again, thank you for all your hard work and the team for bringing this again to us. So thank you for that. Any questions? Norma.
Thank you, Chair. I think they're questions of clarification, and I think Laura's touched upon them, because I always find this quite a challenging report to read. But it's a very good report, and, you know, it does take a bit of concentration to get your head around it, particularly I'm not financially capable, as a lot of people probably here. I think what I had a query on, Laura, was you mentioned overall borrowing increased by 31 million, also to cover cash flow pressures, and you mentioned this in your introduction of 25 million. Is that a problem for years to come? Is that cash flow problem going to be carried over to the next year and the year after? Because I'm just thinking of our longer-term planning, really.
The majority of the cash flow problems was actually in relation to any schemes that we've had funded by grants. So we have to spend the money up front, and then we get the grants in then. So if you were to have a look at how much money we had in April, you would have seen we were kept quite cash rich then in April. But saying that, it will need to be monitored more closely than we have done in the past as well.
Okay. And the other question I had was two questions really. On page 111, you've got the net loans requirement for this year, 359.3 million, which seems exceptionally high. And was there a reason for that? And then on page 112, interest rate indicator, we've got not complied with, and I thought, what does that mean? And it's a question of clarification more than anything else, so that I can really understand. Page 111 and 112. 111, net loan requirement for this year, 359. It just sounded exceptionally high.
Could you tell us which section of the report is? Because your page numbers, we're looking at the intranet, which hasn't got the same page numbers.
Sorry, I need to go down. Page 111 it is.
It'd be under the Treasury Management Prudential Indicators, with the liability benchmark, and then following that section.
So, sorry, apologies about that. So are you looking at table 1, the balance sheet summary?
I've got the figure as 359.3 million net loans requirement for this year. Sorry, I'm scrolling down to get to it.
Sorry, we are struggling to find where you are. It's just, that's the.
You can't find it either.
Okay, is that the table just above the graph?
That's a liability graph. I've got 359.3. I'll find that figure. Oh, I'll come back to you if it's still a problem.
The interest rate exposure, which is 3,539, is that the figure? Is it 539?
So if I could take your interest rate exposure question then. So one of the reasons that we failed that indicator is because we have a number of loans that were due to mature quite soon, either on the end of the financial year or at the beginning or quite early on in the financial year. What this indicator shows is that if we had to take out a loan in order to cover that borrowing requirement, what additional cost would that be if the interest rates were to go up 1% or down 2% or down 1% as well? So this is a this is just an indication of if we needed to refinance any of our existing loans, what potential impact could that be on revenue? And that's one we failed. Yeah.
I thought you did a fantastic job, Laura, being able to do that when Reece is holding up a screen in front of you, and Marion, then you kept talking. Well done.
And then my last question was at page 112, and I've got interest rate exposures, and then you've got interest rate indicator, the limit actual, and we've got complied no. What does that mean, no?
That just means we haven't complied with it, but I can have a look at how that's presented.
Yeah, because when you said no, it raised a concern in my mind. I thought, oh, what does that actually mean that we haven't complied with it?
Apologies about that. But coming back to your first question about the capital financing requirement, what this actually shows is what our loans are, what our outstanding borrowings are, but it also measures our liabilities, so that will include our PFI liabilities as well, and that is particularly high because we've had to recalculate that under the new IFRS 16 arrangement. So that's not necessarily the actual loans that we've got out, but it can be a mixture of loans and the council's liabilities. Sorry, if I answered your first question about the CFR.
You're going to come back on that. That's fine. That's fine.
Are we okay now? Are we all right? Okay. I'm amazed. We've got 3 finance experts there. Not necessarily IT experts, but there we are. Any other questions? Don.
I almost hesitate answering another question. I'll refer to some page that you haven't got. One thing I wanted to ask, Laura, is thank you again for the report. Every 6 months it comes, and still a little bit of a mystery, but slowly getting there. But the one thing that I noted, and I wanted to ask a question, was like with Warrington Council have been reinstated from the bad books, and now I've got a BBB+. And I noticed that Cornwall have had theirs withdrawn because they don't want a credit rating. Would I be correct in assuming that Newport have got an A1 rating?
We haven't got a rating, but what we are able to look at is our inflows. So our Treasury advisors, they actually benchmark us against other authorities.
Right.
And we are fairly middle of the road, I would say, in our performance and in our financial strength ratings as well. So we're slightly above average, I would say.
Just to also say, most councils haven't got a rating, and that is because they go to the WLB for their loan requirements. You don't need a credit rating. It's government borrowing there. If you want to go into other financial markets, you may want to then get a rating, and that is what Warrington, etc., were sort of doing because of their commercial activities, as it were. So they're not in the majority; they're very much in the minority there.
Okay, it's probably don't look on the internet and don't use AI then, because if you do this, then it says that Newport have got an A1 rating, and it's considered high-quality credit worthiness. So that sounds real praise indeed. So I wouldn't go anywhere near there.
I mean, we'll obviously take that, but actually the process of getting a credit rating is very in-depth, very expensive, etc., etc. Most councils don't do it. But as Laura said, though, we are kind of in a reasonably okay place compared to lots of other local authorities.
I would stick with my original comment, and Marion, don't do anything. AI has already done it for you.
Any other questions? No? Any comments? No? The recommendation is to note the Treasury Management Report and activities for the period 24-25. And I think the only comments I think we should make to Council is that they've been picked up anyway, is the non-compliance with the prudential indicators in paragraphs 19, 20 and 21. You'd report those anyway, because it says that the breach therefore does not represent a significant financial impact and will be reported to Council in due course. So if they could be noted, because you're going to do it anyway. And I think the other one is the point Norma made, which is the interest rate exposure, where it says to non-complied with, if they could be mentioned to Council or wherever they go first. Is it Cabinet first and then to Council? Or if you could just pick those two areas up, that would be, in my view, we need to move that they be raised specifically. Someone prepared to move then that we note and we raise the issue about the compliance? Thank you, Don. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. Item 11, which is the Corporate Risk Register. Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. So this starts on page 115 for clarity. This is the Q4 24-25 Corporate Risk Register. As you know, the committee reviews the register and assures Cabinet of the arrangements around risk. At the end of Q4, there were 15 risks recorded in the register considered to have significant impact on the achievement of Council's objectives, 7 of those being severe and 8 major. The committee has commented previously on the actions and some of the timelines in the register, and I'd just like to point out is because it's the end of a financial year, services will be going through their updates and their service plans, so you would expect to see changes to those dates and those actions in Q1 for next year. I'll just ask Paul if he wants to comment on any of the detail.
No, there's no further comments on the detail. We're happy to take questions from the committee chair.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you again for a quarter report. It'd be interesting to see what risks come forward in the new risk register in whenever it is, June, July, whether there be any substantial amendments, changes or wherever. But are there any questions? Norma?
I have to comment. I do like the risk register. I think it's really clear. You can really see what is happening. But just a couple of comments. City centre security, one thing I picked up was targets were missed, and then I looked at actually what the actions were, and they really were ongoing actions. And I was wondering whether, you can't say actually this ended at this point. So I was just wondering whether that we need to sort of indicate where something is ongoing, that it hasn't got a completion date. I can't remember what the actions were. It was something like cooperate with the police, etc. Well, you're going to have to do that in an ongoing way. You can't say, oh, we actually finished cooperating with the police yesterday. Are you with me? Because, I go through it and I look for the greens, and then I go, oh, gosh, what's happened here? And then I thought, oh, well, actually, when you look at that, there's not an end date for it. So that's just one comment. And the other one was on information and cyber security, and of course cyber security is in all our minds with what happens with Marks and Spencers and the Co-op, etc. And this is on page 149. I just wondered where we are on the actions from the annual information risk report, because they're not completed.
Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. On the first point about actions for very big ongoing risks, I think that is a challenge, and I was going to compare cyber and the city centre safety one, because clearly they're very long-term actions, and I think we could probably work on the way those are worded and expressed and just make sure they're current. I think that's the case with it. You could make that same comment, I think, about a number of those ongoing risks. despite what I've said about Q1, I think there's a danger they say something similar there, so we'll look at that. Regarding cyber, we've all woken up in a cold sweat, haven't read the news. I mean, firstly, in terms of that specifically, there's a new cyber assessment framework that the WLGA are piloting. We're taking part in that exercise, and we're currently working through our own, it's kind of a self-assessment, and we're working with colleagues across Wales to determine what that looks like. We actually run, I can't think what the right term is, simulations, if you like, of cyber attacks, and we've done one of those very recently. Clearly, they're very challenging, as you've seen from the big organisations. In terms of the annual information risk report, that's actually within my area anyway. The report is being compiled for scrutiny right now. I think the deadline is 2 weeks away. We had our internal officer information governance group this morning. Reece is chair of that, and received a report on the latest. I would say a substantial number of those actions have significantly progressed. We haven't finished assessing them all. And I would also refer back to the quite recent Audit Wales reviews of cyber, and I would confirm that all of the actions there have been completed. We're never finished on cyber. That's great. Thank you very much.
Don?
Yeah, mine's a question that hopefully you can help my ignorance. It's on 151 with the education, where it's got a small number of schools seem likely to be unable to set a balanced budget and will therefore need to apply for a licence deficit. What is a licence deficit?
So that's an arrangement between the local authority and the school about basically a plan about timescales on spending more than they're actually receiving through grant. So in order to support, so the finance team do an amazing amount of work with individual schools. Newport schools are in a significantly better position than lots of other areas as a result of that. But really, it's about a planned approach to bringing that budget back within the spend limit. So I think 18 months ago, the council set up a chief education officer's grant, so in order to support that as well. So there's a sum of money the chief education officer can allocate to the individual schools to help them with that process as well. And it was one of the things Estin picked up. Our approach to that is one of the good practice. They put that as a bit of a case study. Okay.
Any other questions? Can I just ask a question on that, Reece? Is there a specific time scale they've got to get back to a balanced budget? Is it 3 years or is it sooner?
It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the circumstances. So one of our schools is struggling with the budget at the moment is because of numbers on roll. So obviously that, and it's a Welsh medium provision. So as it fills up, its budget position will become better. So it's very dependent on the case.
So it's each case on its own individual merits then?
Yeah, but they're not long-term arrangements.
That's okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Any comments? Don?
Yeah, just two very quick comments. One's to do with balancing the council's medium-term budget. Just want to highlight that where it's got the council budget is funded 75% by Wales government. I just wanted to underline it because we get this thing from Audit Wales where, you know, there's no medium plan where 75% is coming from Wales government. As soon as they make their mind up, it might make everyone else's life easier. And my other comment is, because I haven't said it too much in the meeting, but eliminate profit from social care. I really get offended that this could lead to prosecution of the head of children's services. I know it's true, but it's not right. You know, and then it says about in terms of the uncertainty continues, the lack of clarity from Wales government around the financial contributions, and yet we've got this noose hanging over the head of children's services. It's just not right. So that's my comment.
Norma.
Can I come back on that comment? Because I think it would be useful to have one of those comments that Don made. It could be useful to have a debate around this. Because I, like Don, took a view on eliminate the profit from, you know, children's services, etc. And I thought, that is wrong, because why would private providers be in it if it's not profit? But I have seen some of the figures, weekly figures, for putting children in these homes, and they're horrendous in terms of how high they are. And I think that's what worries me, is that our only alternative as an authority is to actually build and run our own homes. Because, you know, I saw one figure that was 30,000 a week. And, you know, when you see figures like that, you think, my gosh, the profit levels of that home has been massive. And, you know, I agree, you have to incentivise the private sector. You know, if you want a service, you have to incentivise them. And, you know, there's got to be profit in it. But when you see some of these figures, I think there's a big question mark in terms of value. So it's a very difficult issue, because I had your view completely when I heard that, but when I delved into it and I've looked at some of the figures, it's quite, yeah.
I can see Rhys want to come. As you know, I commented on the Welsh Government's piece of legislation in regards to making profit out of children. I think the difficulty we've got to understand is we moved on years ago from having children's homes and obviously placing them appropriately. The big figures I think you're speaking about, we've got some of the most vulnerable young people in society in care. They need a significant amount of support. It's not only young people in children looked after, but some of the educational provision as well is absolutely phenomenal cost. And I think for a local authority to endeavour to deliver a service across that sector is almost impossible, because some of these young people need 24/7, 365-day care, not on a one-to-one basis, on a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 basis, and there's a significant cost to that. Now, obviously, some authorities have got very few young people in the system, where others have got large amount. But I think without the private sector, and they're in it to make money, quite rightly so, I think the system's going to fall at some stage, because some of these young people will go through this, certainly those in secure accommodation, because again, there's not enough secure accommodation in Wales. You know, you're sending young people throughout the countryside. You know, as I said, I had an example with one of my young people in my authority was sent to Edinburgh. Well, that cannot be right. And I think, you know, this is, whilst I understand the basis of it, I think it's ill thought out in reality. And I think it puts an enormous amount of pressure on a local authority. The budgets are stretched as they are currently. And if you're going to deal with some of these most vulnerable young people, unless I'm persuaded otherwise, I think the system's going to fall over. But Rhys, I don't know whether you wanted to comment.
I'm not going to comment on the policy decision. You know, that is for Welsh Government. What we are dealing with as a result of that is a corporate risk now, which is, you know, an inflation. There's two issues with this, right? There's a budgetary one, and that has been inflated because obviously there's no pressure on the private sector, and you know that's no doubt about it, increased the cost of some of these placements. As Gareth said, it's complex because we have got young people in 3-to-1, 24/7 supervision as well. So there are genuine costs, there are health requirements, and there's, you know, a conversation with health about funding those, and education requirements, etc. go along with that. So it is really, really complex. I think from our point of view, and for assurance of the committee, is there's a policy decision that's been made. It has resulted in something happening, and our response to that is, both from a budget point of view and just because it's the right thing to do, that Newport children should be in Newport. So looking for accommodation in Newport and working through that ourselves. Interestingly, because that private sector costs have been inflated, it's much easier to make the financial case for doing that now than it would have been when the local authorities moved from having their own facilities into the private sector. So, you know, as I said, we're doing what we need to do. There is uncertainty in the system. There's uncertainty about the funding. But, you know, we have to, because we have got the duty of care, we have to proceed with, you know, ensuring we have the right facilities.
It's a very difficult one. You know, again, you've got your corporate parenting responsibilities and all that. So, you know, there we are. Any other comments? No? Okay, the recommendation is that we note the contents of the report, and obviously we can see what the new risk register is when it comes forward in July. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Dom. Seconded. Thank you, Norma. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul and Tracy. Next one is the Forward Work Programme. We've got the Forward Work Programme there before us. Oh, you're going to take this, are you, Taylor?
Yeah, so I compiled the Forward Work Programme. The officers have had time to consult with it, so it's kind of to be agreed upon. Any changes that may occur through the year occur naturally as part of the process.
Yeah, thank you for that, Taylor. Obviously, given the first item, well, you know, the first item we discussed about the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in press account, if that could be brought forward if we've got time. July is very busy anyway, but obviously that may well come forward to July. The other issue I just want to raise is that many of us attended the Violence Against Women course, and some commentary was made at those sessions about people attending courses, etc. You know, people weren't attending and such like. And I'm just wondering whether the department or whoever delivers the training could bring a report to us. There was an Audit Wales report in 2019 which made, I think, 4 recommendations, and obviously before this committee was in place, but an audit committee would have been previously in place. And one of those recommendations, again, was about training and endeavouring to get people onto the training. And I'm just wondering whether we could just have a short report as to whether that still subsists 6 years on. Can I just leave that for someone to have some thought about? Because I said in the meeting, I would want some assurance that these matters were being addressed and all the issues raised in it was a national report, Reece, not a Newport specific, that they'd all been addressed. So I'm just wondering whether someone could pick that up for us.
Yeah, we'll have a look. It's a regional service, so I'll have a conversation with the regional team around it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, any other questions on the Forward Work Programme? Any comments? Apart from that comment, obviously we note the contents of the report, and obviously if Amy brings, if there's an issue of an interim report on gifts and hospitality by July, that would be useful. Otherwise, we'll have to go to September. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Date of the next meeting then is the whatever it was, 31st July. Okay. I now close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for their attendance. Thank you, everyone.